Becoming Undone is the podcast for those who dare bravely risk mightily and grow relentlessly. Join me, Toby Brooks, as I invite a new guest each week to examine how high achievers can transform from falling apart to falling into place. Joining me this week is the founder and president, head coach of Inner Champion Consulting, Mike Flores. Coach Flores provides executive coaching and leadership training to upper level executives, and you'll see some familiar names where he's crossed paths with the subject of our documentary, Dick Tomey, spending time at UCLA, the University of Hawaii, San Jose State University, and the University of Arizona, as well as Cal State Dominguez Hills. He's also worked as government and community relations consultant to Fortune 100 companies. Mike, I can't tell you how happy I was to read your email, so I'm really thankful for you to reach out and really excited to dig into the history before the history. So thanks for joining me tonight.
Well, I'm excited to be here. I have to let you know, Toby, that I really felt that what you're putting together has been done. I know you're at the initial parts of it, but it's been done so professionally. And so that's why I actually reached out to you and felt confident about being able to communicate with you and know it's going to be a first-class episode and a first-class experience for myself. So anytime I can talk about Coach Tomey, who I think about every day and has affected my life outside of my dad more than anybody else in the world, I'm happy to do that.
That's fantastic. Well, I thank you for those kind words. And your message came at the perfect time because I actually had just finished my interview with Jesse Sapolu, but I was thinking I really didn't have much about Coach Tomey before Hawaii. I thought, I don't know who to reach out to. I was really struggling to try to find some connections. And the nature of this podcast thing, unlike a book where you would do all the work and then you release it, the podcast kind of gets released in pieces along the way. So not only am I thankful that you contacted me, I'm thankful you contacted me so quickly. Well, let's start at the beginning for you. You were a QB at UCLA when your paths crossed with Dick Tomey. So tell me a little bit about the person and athlete you were growing up and how you ended up a Bruin.
Well, I grew up in Venice, California. I went to a high school that threw the ball about 8 times a game, and I really felt strongly that the only way I could go to college and pay for it was get an athletic scholarship. To my original goal was to get a scholarship to San Diego State. At that time, Eric Coryell was at San Diego State, and that was my goal.
Yeah.
Then after I got done with high school, I went to Santa Monica College, and Santa Monica was known for producing All-American Community JC quarterbacks, and I was lucky enough in my second year to be named JC All-American, and I got a scholarship to UCLA. And actually, Dick Vermeil, who I understand you spoke to and will be on a later podcast, was a coach who recruited me. And so I went to UCLA, and Coach Prothro at that time was a head coach. And Coach Prothro, as soon as I think it was like in middle or late December, he was offered to be the head coach at LA Rams. So he, along with Coach Vermeil, left. And Coach Pepper Rogers was hired. Coach Rogers was here in 1966 Rose Bowl team. He was the offensive coordinator, and Coach Gary Beeben, the Heisman Trophy winner for UCLA. And he came back, was named head coach, and Dick Tomey was his offensive coordinator and quarterback coach. So I still remember vividly the first time I met Dick. We were at the UCLA basketball game. That's where the recruits were normally put right behind one of the post, and Dick was in a blue blazer, white shirt, khaki pants, and that was like what he wore de rigueur until he went to Hawaii.
Right.
He was he had that look in his eye that you knew he was really a very serious man, and at the same time so warming. So it was good. And then he was my quarterback coach at UCLA.
Yeah.
You know, I
Yeah.
started what would be my junior year. I led us to a very good 2-7-1 season, and Dick was my coach.
By
That
some standards, 2-7-1 is an
Yeah,
okay season.
well,
Not by UCLA, but
it wasn't UCLA, no. And so they actually, but Dick was my coach, and he and I became very close. That was really the start of our lifelong
yeah,
relationship.
that's wonderful. I
Yeah.
was actually born in Fontana, and my
Okay.
parents moved in 1975, and my parents moved in 76. And so I had no idea, but there's a picture of me at a UCLA Bruins game, and I'm like, I was in the stadium with Coach Tomey before I could even walk.
Oh,
So that's
wow.
kind of a cool thing. Probably the only sporting event my parents ever took me to. Um, so Coach Tomey had been at UCLA as an assistant, as you mentioned, 71 through
Right.
76. And eventually he was, and famously, a defensive mind. So
Right.
interesting to hear that he was your QB coach. But your path first crossed when you were a student athlete, but then he took you to Hawaii when he got the head job. So
He did.
talk me through how he shared that news with you and offered you to be one of the two people he was going to take with him.
Well, he and I worked together. I became a student coach because the next year, 1972, Mark Harmon came in and they switched to the wishbone. So I was the opposite of a wishbone quarterback. I was a passing quarterback, and I started coaching. And I under the tutelage at that time of Homer Smith. Um, he kind of took me under his wings, and Dick then became defensive back coach. And but he also was the head freshman coach,
Mm-hmm.
and I ran the offense and coached quarterbacks for the UCLA freshman team. So I was responsible for all the freshman quarterbacks that they came in
Mm-hmm.
to coach them as well as the receivers. And so I worked with Dick while he was our coach as the head freshman coach, and he was still coaching quarterbacks. And then Dick Vermeil came in 1974. Pepper Rogers left to go to Georgia Tech, and Coach Vermeil came. And as I indicated to you, Coach Vermeil was one of the coaches that recruited me to UCLA. He was my main recruiter. And I was sitting up in the offices up at the J.D. Morgan Hall. And uh, Coach Vermeil walked by and he said, "Mike, I want to talk to you," because I had wanted to speak with him. And he says, "I want you to be my staff, and I want you to be my full-time grad assistant. There's only going to be one of you. You'll be in all my meetings. You'll be in all my staff pictures." And as I shared with you, I think one of the staff pictures that I had with him, and Dick Tomey was on that staff. Dick was our
Yeah.
defensive back coach. Terry Donnie, who was on that staff,
Mm-hmm.
who became head coach at UCLA. Jim Moore was on that staff, next head coach at New Orleans Saints. Um, Carl Peterson was on that staff, who later became the president of the Kansas City Chiefs.
Mm-hmm.
Rod Dahauer was our offensive coordinator, who later became head coach of the Stanford Cardinal and at that time Stanford Indians, and also the Indianapolis Colts. It was an unbelievable staff to be
Yeah.
under.
Right.
And I have to say this about Dick as an assistant. He was in charge of the defensive backs, and they were without a doubt like he was. And I want to talk about this in terms of his personality. They were the toughest group on our team.
Yeah.
They took on his personality, where they were tough. They were just intense, They gave great effort every play, whether it's
Mm.
on practice or in the game. And that really was what Dick was all about,
Yeah.
you know. And
Yeah.
then I went up to Coach Vermeil, left to go to the Philadelphia Eagles. I went up and coached a year at San Jose State under Ling Stiles, who was also on our Rose Bowl staff. Dick stayed and was a defensive coordinator for Terry Donahue's first All UCLA team. And then it was probably late June, early July, I think, of 1977 that Dick was hired on. And as you indicated in one of your previous podcasts, told the story of how that all came about. And he could only bring two coaches. And he called me up, and I was coaching quarterbacks and wide receivers at San Jose State. And he said, Mike, I want you to come and join me at the University of Hawaii. And obviously, when Dick says, I want you to follow me, it was a very easy decision for me to make.
Yeah.
I went there right away, and we stayed there. Our first month, we stayed at the Holiday Inn at the airport. Myself, Bob Burt, who was the other coach he could bring in, and Dick, we stayed in one room. And Dick, of course, always got the bed. There were two beds and a rollaway, and Bob and I always had to flip coins for the rollaway. But Dick got the bed, and that's how we started our coaching career. And then we were at Hawaii in Quonset huts. We still had Quonset huts from World War II at UH, just right outside the field, and it was skeletal facilities at best. But what a unique time to be at with Dick, and to be at the beginning of really a great saga in football tradition at UH that they still have up to today.
Yeah. And that really took me by surprise, that how late he was hired. And so the timing seemed poor on one hand, but in the grand scheme of things, the timing was perfect. Hawaii's just moved to D1. They're moving to the WAC. They've got a fantastic new stadium. I mean, everything about the program is in growth mode. And so you got a chance to be there. But famously, as you mentioned, like the prior staff had been signed to extensions. And so you and Bob Burt coming in with this new coach, on paper, that's kind of a recipe for division. And it would be very easy to see my guys versus not my guys and things like that. But that's not how Coach Tomey's wired. That brokenness or dysfunction, I assume, didn't have a lot of chance to root. What was that first season like with that staff? And what did you see him do to bring unity to that staff?
Well, I think that you're exactly right. How hard it must have been for the guys that were there, knowing that really they were all on one-year contracts, because they had to prove themselves to Dick. And fortunately, there was a very good staff there in place. Rip Shear, who I took over. I came in, and Rosario was the first offensive coordinator and organizer and coach quarterbacks and receivers. I took his place, so he was bumped down to running backs coach. He had been with Joe Paterno. He was a GA for Joe Paterno in Penn State. Tom Freeman, they were just a group of guys that were somehow bought in immediately to Dick, because it was so easy to buy into what he was saying, because they understood that he was a people person first. Football was not the most important thing to him. Giving your best was, and every day, that was more important. but also being with your family. Um, it was a unique change from the staffs I had been on before. Dick really felt that having time with your family consistently, having the families come out to practice, having come out pre-game, it was very unique. Ohana was very, very big, and it started and continued with Dick.
Yeah. Yeah, I've always loved that, and I've grown to appreciate it even more. Having my first guest, Lance Tominaga, and then Jesse Sapolu, even Brent Brennan that I just spoke with, that word family keeps coming up. And I think it's important to point out, yes, he brought unity to a staff that was divided, but he also had to essentially re-recruit the entire roster right away because these were players that didn't sign to go to UH to play for Dick Tomey. They'd gone to play for your predecessor. So I loved in the book where you quipped that your arrival in Hawaii doubled the Hispanic population. He was a uniter of people from all different backgrounds, and he embraced the culture in Hawaii in a way that is worthy of mention in 2025. I can't imagine how revolutionary that was in the 70s. So, how would you say his approach to respecting all cultures and integrating teams behind this common purpose, uh, while also keeping respect and identity, impacted you as a member of the staff?
I think, first of all, Dick was the best recruiter I've ever been around. And I've been around some great recruiters. I mean, just some fantastic recruiters. As an assistant and as a head coach, he was the best recruiter I ever been around. And the reason for that is because when he entered a room, you just felt so comfortable. You felt like he was part of your family. And that's what he was able to do with the Polynesians, people there in Hawaii, with the African American communities, with all races and creeds. He would like first thing he would do when he'd go down to a on a recruiting visit, and I was with on hundreds of recruiting visits with him. He would like sit there and talk to the mother. He wouldn't even talk to the recruit. He'd sit there and talk to the mother. Then he talked to the father. He talked to the brother or sister because he felt that that was really important. That was a way to make sure that if you're going to go ahead and let me coach your son, I want you as the parent and the brother and sister to make sure you feel good about me as their coach, but not only as their coach, but as their mentor and leader. And that's what it was. That's what he did. He was very unique in that area, and till the day he died, he had that influence on people that sticks with you.
Yeah.
That it's just part of you.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard to explain.
Yeah. I think it's interesting that you had a perspective that was probably different from anyone else. You had been a student athlete on a team that he coached, and then you're with him at the beginning in Hawaii, and then you join him again in Arizona. How did you see him and or his coaching approach change or grow, or was he consistent that whole time? How did you
You
see
know,
him
I
change as a coach over the years?
I think as a coach, I think he basically was the same guy that he was the day I met him
Hmm.
at UCLA when I was as a quarterback. I
Yeah.
mean, that's just who he was. He didn't change. His philosophy was still the same. It's about people first. Like I'm sure other people will say that he always said, football isn't complicated. People are,
Yeah.
and um, that's what he felt. So he wanted to make sure that people felt good about themselves, that they were supported, that they received, as we say in Spanish, cariño, which is support and love and affection that you need in order to be your best.
Yeah.
And that's what he was about. And um, again, with all this, please know that Dick was the most intense person
Mm.
I've ever been around.
Yeah.
His intensity was contagious. And
Yeah.
that's what you saw on his great team and all his teams, but certainly in Desert Swarm. That was Dick Tomey. That was his personality.
Mm.
You know, that was the intensity that he brought on the defensive side. That's who he was.
Yeah.
Um,
And now he's acting at scale of the same thing you saw with the DBs at UCLA when he's an assistant. And
yeah,
so that those teams take on the personality of their leader.
exactly. Yeah,
So
yeah,
I, I recognize that things weren't always, undefeated seasons or national championships. That really wasn't his legacy. It was connecting, and it was uh, his ability to walk a very fine line. Another tell me is I love the one you shared, but another one that has stuck with me all these years is you're either coaching it or you're allowing it to happen. He
yep,
was fiercely competitive, but he would also fiercely defend his players. And
absolutely.
that's a tough line to walk because if you've got a player who is underperforming or not going to class or making poor decisions and you're fiercely defendant of them, you can enable. At the same time, if you're a competitor, you can crush them. But I feel like he had an ability that I haven't seen in many leaders to expect the world of you, but love you hard enough and well enough that you recognize that this guy's not crushing me. I'm curious with your work in executive coaching and with leaders, put that in perspective for us. How does Dick Tomey's approach and his ability to walk that fine line compare to what you've seen in Fortune 500 companies and ADs and high powered executives?
I think there's a great correlation. Um, I think as someone who coaches leaders, whether they're in athletics or in business, your first goal is to encourage them to be their best
Hmm.
in every facet of their life. And that's what Dick did, and that's what, hopefully I try to do with the people that I work with is that I want them to be their best. And so that also means push them beyond their limits.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and that's what Dick did to us as assistants. That's what he did to me as a player, and that's what he did to his players that he coached. He pushed us to our limits,
Yeah.
and he
And
believed in us. But he made sure that we were uh, doing the best we could. And going back to what you were saying earlier, Toby, in terms of the fact that he didn't like win national championships and all that stuff, but to put it into context, um, he was at two places: University of Hawaii, where of course at UH you're not going to get a chance to win national champion,
mm-hmm.
and then he was at Arizona, and at Arizona you had what SC, UCLA, uh, Stanford at that time, Washington, Oregon, all these schools that had Arizona State, that all had better facilities at the time that he was there and still do.
Yeah.
Um, they had a stronger football tradition. And um, so automatically you're like middle of the pack.
Mm-hmm.
And what Dick was able to do was to get the most out of the Teddy Bruschies.
Yeah.
Teddy Bruschi had one scholarship. He had two scholarships. He had University of Pacific and University of Arizona.
Mm.
Those are the two scholarships he had.
Yeah.
You know, that's a perfect example of the type of person that Dick molded and maximized in terms of their potential.
Yeah. Yeah. I've been consistently amazed at what he was able to do with lesser facilities and on paper what recruiting rankings would say were lesser classes, but they weren't. They were quality people that would buy into the culture, and he would turn that 2 or 3 star into a a Teddy Bruschi or a Marcus Bell or any of a countless list of student
Absolutely.
athletes who were just tremendous under his tutelage. And
Absolutely.
I think it's just a testament to the fact that he didn't give up on you. He invested, and he was more interested in the student athlete that he sent away from campus than the one he got uh, as a freshman or as a transfer.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is there a particular game or interaction maybe that stands out in your memory from your time coaching with Coach Tomey?
um, there's a couple, I would say. Um, he, when his first victory was against University of Idaho at University of Hawaii. And after, when I was in Hawaii, I was very close to he and his then wife, Mary Tomey. And after the games, the three of us would go back to Dick's place in Kahala and just sit outside in his little lanai and talk about the game. And he, after his first victory, he didn't think that this was the beginning of something great. This was something that he expected for many years. I think he had dreamt about that moment for so long, and he knew how it was going to pan out in his life.
Yeah.
And then the other time is after he got done coaching. Again, I would go up and see a lot of his games at San Jose State, and whenever I was with him pregame, even when he was at Arizona and I got out of coaching, I would be with him before games. I would sit, and he and I would be in the hotel together pregame every time we were, whether it was home or away, and if I was there. And I remember one time he was at San Jose, and I'd been dying to ask Dick this question because at that time I already been out of coaching for like maybe 10 years. And as I look back on it, I said, God, what a pressure cooker coaching is, and especially being the head coach. I mean, it just like, God, you have so much pressure on you. And so I asked Dick. It was I forget what game it was, but it was in San Jose. I said, Coach, I said, do you ever get nervous before the game? I mean, just think about it. Do you ever get nervous? I mean, this is a big game you got coming up here. He said, no, never have. That was their exact words. And I'm thinking, I would be like an upset stomach. I'd be nauseous and all that. And no, he would be sitting there, having a piece of popcorn or whatever, and be talking. He said, nah, I'm not nervous, because he had so much faith in the fact that he was doing the best he could, and his players going to be prepared as best he could, that he was just going to just know that kids are going to play hard, and whatever happened. And if that was the most important thing to him.
Yeah. The tougher it gets, the harder they play, right?
Yep. Yep. Yeah.
Well, famously, sadly, in 2019, we lost him after a brief bout with cancer. Gone too soon. If you
Yeah.
had a chance to pull up a chair and have a conversation with Dick Tomey today, what would you say? And what would you want to ask him that maybe you never got the chance to ask?
Well, let me just backtrack a second and tell you again, as I've shared with you throughout this, how close I was to Dick. He was diagnosed in 2019. In 2018, we had a reunion of UCLA that he came to. I picked him up at the airport. I took him to the hotel and was with him, and he had a cough at that time. And this was like in the middle of summer, so it was right before the season started. And I said, Coach, I said, Dick, I said, you got a cough there. You get that checked out? He says, yeah. My doctor says, I got a little something. They don't know what it is, but you know, I'm okay. And then come that next January, he had, of course, we find out that it was lung cancer, and I went to go see him. He passed away in May. I saw him in February, I believe. Went to see him, and he was about 75% in terms of his mental capacity. I think he was on a lot of medications, a lot of chemo. It was just kind of disrupting, but it was great to see him. And then sadly, we lost him. And if I had a chance to visit with Dick today, I would just thank him so much for teaching me so much of what it is to be your best.
Mm.
That how important it is to love harder than you think possible the people that you need to love, to every person that you come into contact with, find a way to make them better after you leave them. And in that, I'm still pissed off that he and I used to play one-on-one basketball at UCLA. I'm still pissed off that he's ahead 11-7. I'm still pissed off about that. I tell him that. But because he loved to compete, man.
What a competitor.
Wow, did he love to compete?
Yeah.
And, I
I
was a good
remember Camp
competitor
Coach
too, but wow, he
I don't know
loved to
if you
compete.
all, yeah, I don't know if you all camped at Camp Cochise when you were at Arizona,
Oh
but
yeah, oh yeah,
okay.
we
So,
were there. Uh-huh.
famously, I was just a GA, so I wasn't invited. But the basketball games in the college there
Yeah,
in Douglas, and then the swim Olympics, he was a
yeah,
competitor. And then I've seen footage of him playing baseball.
yeah.
He wasn't going to play just to have fun. He was
No,
playing to win.
no. And later, after he got done at the University of Arizona, he played on the local baseball team, and I used to go see him play. Just a little uh, municipal league. I think he had more fun doing that than anything he ever did in his life. He loved baseball. That was his first sport. That was his first love.
Yeah,
You know,
for sure.
yeah,
Well, Mike, obviously your career has taken a different path. You kind of got out of the grind of college athletics and coaching and administration, and now you're a successful coach of executives. How do you think Coach Tomey's legacy continues to serve you today in that kind of different role?
as I'm sitting here in my office, I counted 5 pictures of him. So that tells you a lot. I have
Mm,
5 pictures of Dick right now. In terms of Dick's, he and I as a staff, he and I at Hawaii, he and I at UCLA together, he and I at Arizona. Um, his book, I'm surrounded by Dick Tomey, and I appreciate that, and I love the fact that I am. And I know you're going to speak to some people that feel the same way I do about Dick. I know you talked to Brent. You're going to talk to Coach Vermeil. You're going to have talks to, Rich, his son, who I'm very, very close to, and some other people I'm sure they all feel the same way. They
yeah,
just, Dick, we all walk with Dick as part of us every day.
yeah. And I can't imagine a better legacy than that.
That's right.
Well, Mike, thank you so much for your time. It's really been insightful. I sincerely appreciate it. Thank you for reaching out and for volunteering to do this. It's been uh, insightful, shine a bright light on a season of his life. Let's face it, like the internet doesn't reach real deep into the nether regions of 60s and 70s
Yeah.
college football, not at this level. So I thank you so much
Yeah.
for your insights.
Toby's my pleasure, and I look forward to hearing the rest of your podcast.
Yeah.
And please stay in touch.
Yeah. One last little bit. I always stitch this in. Just introduce yourself, and the name of the show is Becoming Undone. Just say My name is Mike Flores, however you want to introduce yourself, and I am Undone.
Okay. My name is Mike Flores. I'm currently an executive leadership coach. Been a assistant football coach for Dick Tomey and Dick Vermeil at UCLA, University of Hawaii, and University of Arizona. And it's because of the great mentorship and leadership that I've been under that I feel grateful to be able to help others be their best like they helped me be my best. And this has been Undone.
Awesome. Thank you so much. All right, I'm going to stop the recording there. It takes just a